Andrew sent me a note. Andrew's a good friend of mine. He said, Steve, check out the story involving a bird in Canada. A bird in Canada. And I like birds. I like Canada, too. So birds in Canada would be an intersection of two things I like a lot. A person from Winnipeg has been fined $300 for throwing things at a goose. It's a rare case, but a good reminder, a lawyer suggests. Caitlin Gowrluck wrote this for CBC. A Winnipeg woman has been fined $300 for throwing things at a Canada goose that got in her way as she tried to get into her friend's apartment building. Now, I would point out that's $300 Canadian. I used to point that out, but I'd had people get mad at me going, are you making fun of Canadian currency? No, I'm not. But the birds are protected by federal law, which makes harassing them an offense. Now, the woman's 20, at least she's 20 now. She pleaded guilty under federal legislation known as the Migratory Birds Convention Act after being caught on camera throwing a bottle of leather cleaner and a pylon at the goose to chase it off its nest. I think they're talking about one of those parking cones. She said, I was just trying to scare it away, she told a judge in a Winnipeg courtroom last month. Now, I was just trying to scare it away is an out-and-out admission. And it's actually not a good reason to say, well, I saw a bird and I wanted to scare it away. Okay. Was there a reason you needed to scare it away? Now, I do understand people are furiously typing going, Steve, Canada geese, the Canada goose, singular, can be a vicious animal. It can be. I'm very familiar with them. I understand that. I've had them come towards me before. I've had them on my property. I've had them on my roof. I've been sitting watching TV, and all of a sudden I hear dunk, 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 dunk on the roof. And a bunch of Canada geese came in and landed on my roof. But they're heavy birds. And a Canada goose will get very, very aggressive if you go near its nest or if you approach it when it's got its goslings around, okay? And they're big birds. However, her statement, I was just trying to scare it away. Well, I suppose that's better than saying I was just trying to hurt it, but you're, out and out admitting that you broke the law. So the judge said, so you agree that that's what ultimately happened that day? You understand that they are protected birds? Or you know that now, he asked. And she said, now I know. Now I know. It's a case, one expert says, offers a window into the world of Canadian wildlife laws, though it's fairly rare for prosecutions under the Act. Experts say similar incidents between people and animals happen often, but are usually undetected, meaning that nobody sees it or can prove it or, whatever. And this lawyer says the difference in this case is that the person was caught. It's just a fluke. Some passerby happened to have witnessed it and videotaped it. People need to watch out. Everybody's got a camera in their phone now, and people are watching. The investigation into the case started when an environment officer got a call back in May of last year about a woman harassing a nesting goose a day earlier near a Henderson Highway apartment building. Now, the weird thing is that ducks and geese will nest sometimes in seemingly odd places. I've seen them nest in, a little grassy area in a parking lot. People are coming and going all day long, and there's a duck nest right there, a goose nest right there. And I've never had the geese nest on my property as far as I know. But like I said, I've had them land on my roof and in my yard. And when I was growing up, I grew up in a town called Birmingham, and there was a lake not far from me called Quarton Lake, and there were geese there. Now, those geese often got fed by people, so they'd come up to you whether or not they were going to attack you. Many of them wanted food, but I'm quite familiar with these birds. The officer checked the information on the vehicles at the scene, contacted the owner, who said his daughter was driving that day, and she admitted to authorities that she had harassed the goose, but said she wasn't in the right headspace because she'd recently learned she was pregnant. So she's, wasn't thinking straight. So the ticket can be a penalty of up to $730. And the judge agreed to lower the amount. And the prosecutor, the federal crown attorney, said considering the circumstances, a lower fine is appropriate and would still drive home the message that as frustrating as geese can sometimes be, they're protected in Canada. You just have to work around them. And she says, because they can be aggressive, especially when they're nesting. They got lovely plumage too. So the expert they're talking to earlier said she thinks these kind of cases boil down to human entitlement and a lack of education about the law. People tend to think when they see wildlife, well, I was here first. I'm going to do something about this. The animal's in my way, and I'm going to take action. Now, as some of you know, I have animals that I encounter on my property. I've got coyotes. I've got foxes, raccoons, possums. I've got all kinds of animals. I got woodchucks. And I've had people say, Steve, you could trap those animals and dispose of them, or trap them and take them someplace and move them. I got news for you. That thinking that I was here first is wrong. Those animals were here before I was. They were here before we were. And I'm talking not about the exact same animals, but the wildlife, such as a woodchuck. There have been woodchucks on my property, I'm betting going back a few hundred years. They looked at me and said, hey, dude, I was here first. You went and put a garage on my property. If I want to duck into your garage and poke around, that's my right. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I did a video not so long ago. I'll put a link in the description below. So the woman, by the way, she's not saying that's how she thinks. She says that's how other people think. And she says, I think that's where a lot of people come before the court and they say, I didn't know it was a crime. But of course, that doesn't matter. So recent news releases from the Environment and Climate Change Canada help paint a picture of the kind of offenses that lead to people being charged under the Act and the kinds of punishments they can face, with fines ranging from a few $1,000s to over $1 million. But of course, in this case, the fine max was $730. In case you're curious, in Manitoba, conservation officers mostly use the Act for hunting enforcement, like hunting without permits or killing more birds than allowed. Less frequently laid charges include taking the eggs, possessing live birds, and selling bird taxidermy or feathers. And a lot of people will see a young animal and assume it's been orphaned and go, oh, look at that baby deer. It's been abandoned by its mother. No, it hasn't been. No. And so people will then, interfere. Don't do that. If you honestly think it's been orphaned, call somebody who's going to tell you, no, it's not, but let somebody else handle it. Conservation officers lay those kinds of charges about 3 to 6 times a year, according to the spokesperson. Meanwhile, another spokesperson said in an email, the federal agency's enforcement officers laid 34 charges under the Act last year, which don't include offenses that were dealt with through warnings, tickets, or fines. So if a bird is causing issues, you should contact Wildlife Service or other wildlife enforcement for advice. The migratory birds legislation comes from a time when Canada goose populations were struggling, which is hard to imagine because there are so many of them around now. And it was required extensive and expensive intervention to bolster the numbers. Now, the numbers are higher now. That could change quickly without protections. So I can tell you right now, I know where I can go. There's a couple fields I know of within 5-10 miles of my house where right now there are several hundred Canada geese just strolling around, fattening themselves up for when they got to go south for the winter. Some of them do fly overhead and head further north, and some stop around here, mid-Michigan, southeastern Michigan. And so, they're all over the place, but that wasn't always the case. And so that's the important thing. And so there is a law on the books that you can't harass them. And the funny thing is, I remember being in law school and reading statutes. And you read a statute that says you can't spindle, you can't mutilate, you can't do this, you can't do that with something. And so you're reading all of the verbs, and it says that, you can't kill this animal, but then you can't harass the animal. And is someone really out there harassing an animal? Yeah, they are. In this case, the goose was on its nest. I'm gonna try to fill in some blanks here. I suspect she was walking up towards her friend's apartment, and she heard something hissing at her, and it was a goose, because that's what they do. They'll come at you and they hiss. They hiss. But they'll also come towards you very, very aggressively. And she probably saw that and backed away. And now they're both on the radar of the other. And she probably could have walked way around and gone inside. But instead she thought, oh, I've got to scare the animal away so I can get past it. Plus she's not in a good headspace, she said. Well, that's not how you handle the situation. So she got fined. It does say the fine was $300. It could have been $700, but I suspect the experience has taught her a lesson. But one of the other things is things like this teach other people a lesson. So there's probably somebody out there who's going to see this story and go, oh, I can get fined $700 if I harass a goose and someone sees it. Maybe I won't harass it next time. So there you go. Caitlin Gowrluck wrote that for CBC News. Andrew, thanks for sending it. Winnipeg woman's $300 fine for throwing things at a Canada goose is a rare case, but a good reminder, the lawyer says. Questions or comments, put them below this. Talk to you later. Bye-bye. That's 3, baby. That is 3.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law.
He calls it the name.
Look at the stars. Look at how they shine for you.